Good evening and welcome to this online presentation from Vistry about their development at Coventry Road. My name is Sachin Shah and I work for Curtin & Co, and we are presenting this scheme today. Sorry, and you should now see the presentation. The presentation today will last around an hour with a presentation of 20 minutes and question and answer for the rest of the time. The first few slides will just explain to you how the system will work and how you can use it. So if you'll see on your screen that you have these 4 arrows pointing in different directions. If you press that, you'll be able to see us in full screen, which means you'll be able to see the presentation completely. If you have any questions throughout, please use the question mark button, which you may see either like this, or you may see an arrow. And if you see an arrow, just press on the arrow and then a questions box will appear. Please type your questions throughout. You can type it whenever you want to. We will come to those at the end. Unfortunately, because of the number of people attending, we can't have everyone speaking, but I will read out the questions. I'll try and group them as much as I can so there's similar questions at the same time. And finally, you can download these banners from by clicking on the banner button, and you can download the slides. They'll also be on the website. This whole presentation, including this recording, is being recorded, and the presentation will be loaded onto the project website tomorrow, so you can watch back when at your leisure, or pass it on to others who were not able to attend. So I'll just introduce the team that you've got in front of you that will be presenting today. Ali from Vistry Group. Vistry are the developers, and Ali will explain the proposals in more detail. Richard West from Seda Planning are the planning consultants, and they look at how the development meets the planning process. Joanna and James from BSB Consulting are both looking at highways and drainage matters, and we'll be coming back to that later on. And then you've got Martin and myself from Curtin & Co, who are running the consultation. So you'll hear from all of us at some point through the presentation. So I'm going to move straight on to pass on to Ali to explain who Vistry Group are. Ali.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending and taking your time to see what we have to say. My name is Ali Shal, and I'm the Senior Architectural Designer at Vistry Homes of the West Midlands region. For those of you who don't know Vistry Homes is primarily a residential house builder, and it was formed last year in January as a result of an acquisition by Bovis Homes of Galliford Try's residential arm. These included Linden Homes and their partnerships and regeneration business. As a result of the acquisition, Vistry are now the 5th largest house builder in the UK. And even though Vistry has a short history, this acquisition has given Vistry a rich pool of expertise with a strong reputation of delivering a good portfolio of homes for our customers. Thank you, and I'll pass you on to Richard.
Thank you, Ali. Yes, I'm Richard West. I'm from Seda Planning. I'm the director of our Newcastle Donington office. We have 2 offices, one based out of Sutton Coldfield and one out of Castle Donington. We are a pure planning consultancy which assists developers in obtaining planning permission or promoting sites. So we've been involved with Vistry, formerly Bovis, on this site through promotion through the examination, and now we're assisting as the planning consultants taking the application forwards. So I'll move on to BSP now.
Hi, I'm Jo Posnett from BSP. We're engineering consultants and also providing transport planning consultancy services for this scheme. We've got various offices in the Midlands and have worked with Vistry and Seda on other schemes.
Lovely. So Richard again here. I'm sure many of you will be very familiar with the with the site, but just to give you an idea, if you're not, it's north of Coventry Road, where the access will be from. The site primarily is agricultural land. It's intersected by a series of hedgerows and trees into 4 distinct parcels. Coming in from the southwest corner, there's a public right-of-way which runs along the railway line on the west of the site, and then moves to the land parcel to the north and then joins up in the northeastern corner of the site by Leyland Road and Ben Road. As I said, the site's primarily agricultural. There is a former pond in the central to eastern parcel, which contains a number of scrub trees. To the north of the site is a land parcel being promoted by a different developer, and north of that, on the south of Bedworth Road, many people may be aware that Redrow are currently running a public consultation for 95 homes on that. North of Bedworth Road is the Taylor Wimpey site for 188 units, and southwest of our site, or just to the south, is a scheme being brought forward by Alfred Homes for 42 units. So together, including our site, we form part of the allocation HSG 8, which is to deliver at least 495 homes over the planned period. So coming back to the site specifically, the land slopes down from the northeastern side down to the southwestern side down by the railway, and the site measures approximately 6.8 hectares. The site's bound to the southeast by the dwellings along Coventry Road, which generally have long back gardens, and also by residential development on the northern or northeastern side of the site by Leyland Road again, albeit they're generally bungalows with shortened back gardens. So that's an overview of the site. So next slide, please. Ali, if you want to pick up on this one.
Thank you, Richard. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take a few moments to talk you through the indicative proposal of the site in more detail. As mentioned earlier by Richard, it is important to note that this site has been identified as a local residential development opportunity by the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council in what Richard mentioned was the HSG 8 allocation. Therefore, with this scheme, we are proposing a residential development of 150 much needed new homes with a view to marketing them at senior members of the community, as well as young and growing families within both the private and affordable housing markets. The houses themselves will be a mixture of 2 to 5 bedroom homes, as well as 2 bedroom bungalows. If you could zoom into the top end, that's where the bungalows are located of the layout. Yeah, the top, very top. That's where, yeah, where you see Sachin's arrow. That's it. So, right, the homes themselves will vary from a composition of terraced units to semi-detached and detached dwellings throughout the site. I would like to also point out that a large number of our homes on this scheme will be designed to achieve what we call Part M42 compliance standards. This means that these houses will include features that make it suitable for adaptation for the elderly or individuals who may have reduced mobility. An example of such adaptation is that at the entrance level of a home where the downstairs toilet, or what we call the WC, is located, space in that area will be large enough for future wet rooms. The benefit of this is that the wet room provision can be easily installed without the need for the homeowner to seek additional planning permission in the future to extend the property. All our homes will be compliant with building regulations and NHBC standards, and will be performing to the latest thermal standards of the requirements by the local authority. They will also be under warranty by the NHBC for 10 years. With regards to the affordable housing, it is the local council requirement to achieve 25% local affordable homes, And this means 37 of these homes will fall in the category, and they will be clustered in different parts of the development. So Sachin, if you want to zoom in just so I can show people where on the layout where they're clustered. So if you see some of the houses with the black dot, that's where the clustering of the affordable homes is currently allocated. So literally, it's just basically dotted around and clustered around different parts of the site. So spread out.
Sorry, Ali, we can't zoom in on the screen.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So yes, so the affordable housing. So yeah, as I was saying, the affordable housing was dotted in different parts of the layout. Some of these units will be marketed on a shared ownership sale, and some others will be let out in a rented scheme. So the affordable allocation will enable young families with an opportunity to rent or buy their homes at a more affordable rate. I'll move on to the open space. Now, the open space shown on the layout is designed in line with the local authority guidance, which essentially states that it should be large enough for local residents to enjoy their surroundings. I will talk more about this on the next couple of slides on layout and landscaping in more detail. And I also want to mention that if permission is granted, then Vistry Homes will make contributions to local infrastructure, which Richard will also touch in more detail towards the end of the presentation. Next slide. Right, these are basically, on this slide you will see we wanted to show you an example of what the finished product or homes will look like. The render elevation to the left of the page of the presentation, that's a 3-bedroom home, you see, and the other two, which are in brick, are an example of our 4- and 5-bedroom houses. Our aim is to keep these visually in line with the local architecture of the surrounding area. So I'll move on to the next slide, Sachin. So this is a slide of the landscaping, and if you just, as you can see on the plan, the entrance to the site is off Coventry Road, and this is via a primary road that leads into the site and gradually filters out into secondary roads. And these roads are designed in themselves to create edge-to-edge connectivity within the site itself. Now, we have also designed the site to cater for cyclists and pedestrians by creating a 3-meter wide footway and cycleway along the main primary road into the site. Sachin, if you want to show that the main primary road is the main that springs off Coventry Road, and on that we'll have the cycleway as well. Yeah. The road is designed, well, the roads are designed to keep the traffic low around people's homes. And you'll also see that some of the homes are coming off private drives, which are shown in pink on the plan. So just off the grey roads, you'll see just towards the ends of these will be, where the arrows are pointing. These are private drives. To the south and southwest of the site, you will see an existing public right-of-way. So that comes in from the railway section and travels from the south to the south. Yes, this is where the arrows are. This public right-of-way will be retained and will be open for all walkers to cross through, and we will not be changing or deviating from what the current public right-of-way is. One of the key features of the site, we aim to provide as much open space for development whilst remaining sensitive to the existing trees and hedgerows. We are keen to maintain the character of the area, and by proposing a new pond to the southwest alongside the existing pond to the north. So both the ponds, you see there's a large one to the south of the site and an existing one to the northern part of the site. So by enhancing this will enhance the local ecological and biodiversity features of the area. On the layout, you will also see that we have also kept 3 natural corridors, green corridors. So these are, if you look at the central part of the site, is the main green corridor of the site, and you'll see towards the west and the east part, you'll have some corridors that are running north to south. So this should create a more open feel to the site, and allowing the ecological features such as habitat, hedgehogs to continue to flush and cross and walk freely between and through the site. And finally, we have towards the south part of the open space, we have a play area allocation for children as part of the open space, and this will allow families to enjoy the site facilities within this proposal. And I'd like to thank you, and I'll hand you over to Joanna.
Hi, thanks, Ali. Yeah, so as Ali mentioned, the site access is proposed off Coventry Road, where there's an existing gated field entrance at the moment. So we're looking to upgrade that to form a formal junction. As you can see on the images there, it will include a 3 metre wide footway cycleway on one side of the access road and a 2 metre footway on the other side. It will involve some works to the adjacent property to ensure we create the desired corridor width through there. The access will be designed to the current highway design standards, and as shown there. We are preparing a transport assessment that will look at the amount of traffic expected to be generated by the scheme and where that traffic will be distributed onto the highway network, and look at any impacts that need to be mitigated. We're working with the Highway Authority in terms of their wider modelling work that's already been completed for the site allocations, and sort of building on that work to determine what mitigation is required from this particular site. The sustainable transport and travel options will be promoted through both on-site features and also through promotion of sustainable options, so providing travel information to residents on occupation. One of those measures is obviously the footway cycleway, and providing links to the public right-of-way that run through the site. The site is a reasonable distance from the village centre in terms of average sort of walking distance of 10 minutes and around 3-minute cycle ride. And we'll be providing obviously the access point, footway, cycleway and footway, and also links to the public right-of-way, so that there's routes in both directions from the site. Another on-site measure will be to provide electric vehicle charging infrastructure for residents. Levels of parking will be provided to meet the standards. There is a new supplementary planning document being due to be adopted that provides updated requirements for that. So we're working with the authority to make sure we comply with that. Most of the properties also have a garage as well as the required number of spaces that are on drives or in parking courts. The road widths, again, will be in accordance with the highway design standards, and generally will be wide enough to accommodate some on-street parking for occasional visitors. There are a number of policy requirements to make contributions towards junction improvements and facilities for cyclists off-site, which are sorry, I've lost my train of thought there, which have been identified in the wider transport modelling work, and all sites within the HSG 8 allocation are contributing to those schemes. I think that's it for now from me. Thank you.
Hello. So it was my role to undertake a preliminary look at the drainage design for the site. So with the surface water, we were looking at a gravity system, which works really well with just the fall of the site being at the high points in the northeast, and it's quite a gradual fall down to the southern corner where you have the pond. So the surface water drainage proposed is in keeping with what would typically happen naturally. As well as that, with large open areas and the fall, the site lends itself really well to those being sustainable drainage systems. So looking at primarily on this site will be swales and conveyance ditches and large pond that you see at the bottom. This will be designed as a wet pond so there'll be an amount of permanent standing water at the bottom, which provides ecological benefits, and the storage capacity of the pond or storm events will be on top of that. So to ensure that there was no negative impact from this site, there will be a restriction which prevents surface water coming off this land faster than it did naturally. So the drainage rate of the natural land will be the drainage rate the discharge rate of the natural land will be the discharge rate of the proposed site. And with the service features combined, there will be no negative impact below stream of the development, which would be the point. So the connection point of this site to where the existing network is next to the bridge where the public right of way crosses underneath the railway. There is a ditch that meets a culvert. This ditch already took the catchment of the land, and it is proposed that it will continue to take the catchment just at the existing rate as well. So it's considered that there will not be any negative impact from the surface water leaving site in this area. The foul sewers, gravity system is not suitable for them due to having to make a connection in Coventry Road. You can see a lot of the site is lower than that. Therefore, an adopted foul pumping system to be maintained by Severn Trent Water is going to be proposed, and it will pump all foul drainage off-site into Severn Trent sewers in Coventry Road, pending obviously a formal agreement with Severn Trent for that to be done. And that's the drainage network really. It's quite straightforward and simple. Yeah, so I guess on to the next slide.
Thanks, James. Richard again here. I'll be picking up on the infrastructure provision that we'll be providing. So as part of the local plan process in allocating the site, the council undertook an infrastructure review to ensure that the developments coming forward as part of the allocations would be able to contribute where necessary to either on-site or off-site provision. So the policy in the local plan, which is policy HSG 8, requires several things. That includes sports facilities and teenage play provision at Bulkington Recreation Ground and Miners Welfare Park in Bedworth. Contributions towards primary, junior and secondary level education to ensure that those schools can be expanded as necessary to take the additional children from the allocations. As Joe touched upon earlier, we also require bus infrastructure enhancements, contributions towards improvements of various junctions in and around Bulkington, as well as a footway and cycleway along Bedworth Road to encourage more sustainable transport. Also a toucan crossing on Bedworth. In addition to the highways, there are also requirements for contributions towards community facilities, the National Healthcare Service and the Clinical Commissioning Group. And then in terms of on-site, as Ali touched upon earlier, we will also be providing 25% affordable housing. So we're currently undertaking a pre-application inquiry with the council to establish what the levels of contributions are, but we are, as developers, committed to ensuring that we provide the necessary infrastructure required to accommodate the additional residents, and so they don't have an adverse impact on infrastructure. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you very much for that. So just talking about the next steps for this application. Obviously, we've got the public consultation event taking place today, and there'll be, I'll just talk further about how you can input into that. A submission of a planning application is due to take place in September. And following on from that, the council will run its own consultation process, which it has to do during that, after the planning application is submitted, and it will then make a decision around the autumn winter of this year, or maybe early next year. And subject to planning permission being granted, construction will start on site the end of next year. So we really want to hear your feedback as part of this application. There is a form that will come up on your screen at the end. So when we finish at 7 o'clock, please don't close your computers down, because as soon as this presentation ends, a form will come up on your screen. If you want a copy of the slides and a feedback form, please do let me know, and you can send that back to us as a on our free post address. Or you can visit our website, vistry-bulkington.co.uk, where you can fill in the feedback form, get a bit more information. In fact, you'll see a recording of this presentation on there tomorrow. And if all that fails, you can email me, sachin@curtinandco.com, sachin@curtinandco.com. My phone number's on the screen as well. Please do contact me if you have any questions. So before we move on, before we finish the presentation, we'll just take some questions that have been coming in. I can see a lot have come in. You've still got time. We are taking questions all the way through to the end. And the way you can ask the questions is you should see a question mark button, or on some screens, especially if you're using an iPad, you might just see an orange arrow. If you click on that, you'll see a box to type in any questions you have. And what I'll be doing throughout is taking those questions and asking them. I'll try and group them together because there may be similar questions. And then we will just answer those as we go. But feel free to keep asking your questions for as many as you'd like to do. So I'm going to start off with it's a transport and cycling question for Joe. And it's with the increase in the housing stock in Bulkington, which will lead to an increase in traffic, what consideration have you made for the increased risk to cyclists and pedestrians between Bulkington and Bedworth? And Joe, do you want to answer that?
Yes, thanks. Yes, this is something that has been identified with the wider transport study that was done for the allocation of these sites. So that is one of the infrastructure measures that will be contributed towards. There's proposals for a new footway cycleway facility between Bulkington and Bedworth, and also a toucan crossing facility on Bedworth Road. And this scheme will be contributed towards disproportionately with the others.
Great, thank you. That's fantastic. Staying on the topic of transport, we've got a number of questions that have come in there. There's a question around the issue of shortage of parking spaces in the village centre, and is there any work that's being done in this development to deal with that? And as well as that, where it is, someone's asked whether that if there are 2 cars per household, how all those cars with only one entrance will impact on the traffic on the road. So if you can just take those 2 questions.
Yeah, sure. Quite different things, really. I think firstly, just thinking about the village centre itself, that's not something that we've been asked to provide a contribution to so far, but we are having ongoing discussions with the Highway Authority. So at the moment there isn't any proposals to increase parking in the village centre as part of this scheme, but it's not to say that that might not come up as something that could be requested. One of the things that we would be doing is obviously trying to sort of manage the number of car trips from this site to the village centre and try and encourage people to walk and cycle as much as possible, with it being within such a reasonable walking and cycling distance for those that are able. That's probably our take on it, if we don't actually do anything in terms of providing additional car parking in the centre. In terms of the second point, the trips from the scheme will be sort of spread out throughout a day. That there are there's national surveys that sort of look at housing sites and the trip rates that are generated by them, and we don't tend to see 2 cars per household leaving the site in the morning peak hour, and we tend to look at sort of the morning peak hour and the PM peak hour period from 8 till 9 and 5 till 6, when we tend to see the most intensive movements to and from housing developments. So we agree the trip rates with the Highway Authority based on survey data. And the other thing to bear in mind is that from the site access, there will be travelling north side, some will be travelling to the north, some to the south, and then again distributing again at the mini roundabout. So there are key sort of focus junctions, the site access and the mini roundabout, where we're going to have the most impact. And we will be, we've looked at some initial capacity assessment work at those. But as I said earlier, we're also looking at some potential wider modelling work alongside the Highway Authority. So that we'll be looking at what the impact is and what necessary mitigation is required.
Great, thank you. And sorry to put you have more questions for you, Joan, but traffic is something that we've received a number of questions on. So we just got a question around what traffic calming measures are going to be in place as you turn into the site, but also are there any traffic control and traffic speed measures on Coventry Road, and is there plans for a bus route on Coventry Road, for instance? So I wonder if you can take those questions.
Within the site, there will need to be speed control measures within the highway alignment, and they will be incorporated. We have completed a speed survey on Coventry Road and have identified that the speeds are higher than the speed limit along there. We've not so far been asked to provide traffic calming along there. However, that will be an ongoing discussion with the Highway Authority as part of agreeing the access design. We'll also need to complete a road safety audit on that, which will take into account things like speeds on that main road. as well as looking at capacity assessments of the access and make sure that it will operate adequately with the main road flow and people trying to turn in and out of the site. So initial capacity assessment looks okay, but we will need to look further at the safety audit side, and may need to incorporate things as a part of that process. Trying to think what the next one was actually. So can you just remind me of the next question?
Yeah, there's a question around again, bus on Coventry Road, bus lanes.
Yeah, the discussions with regards to new bus infrastructure and improvements to services and things are ongoing. So I can't really say either way at the moment on that one, but it is something that we're obviously looking at in detail in terms of what bus provisions there are for the site.
Fantastic. And just to give you a bit of a break, if I just ask Richard to come back on a question around the infrastructure, and the school was mentioned as part of the infrastructure. Is it the intention to build a completely new school? Because one of the questions said that both the infant and junior schools are at full capacity.
Yes, thanks, Sachin. It's not an intention to build a school as part of this site, but the local education authority have requested contributions from the site, which will be spent on expanding the existing school. So it may be at capacity at present, but with contributions from this and the other land parcels that come forward, those contributions would be used to increase the number or the form of entries at those schools to ensure that they can accommodate the additional residents. So no, not to be developed as part of this site, but we will be contributing towards the expansion of the relevant schools.
Great, thank you very much for that. And if I move on to Ali, and just there's questions around layout and landscaping, and will Vistry be maintaining the existing hedgerows on Leyland Road, or will there be a separate green corridor?
You see, at this stage, we are not. There are two ways that we could approach this, and we haven't finalised this with the council yet. The council may want to take ownership of maintenance of the spaces, or they may tell us to employ a management company to look after the open spaces. The open spaces, of course, will have an open space specification, which will outline how in detail exactly how the maintenance needs to happen of these existing hedges, the the grasslands, the wildflowers, the ponds, etc. So that is yet to be finalised and detailed off, and hopefully that we will know about that more towards the end. But of course, either way it's approached, it will be maintained properly.
Great, thank you. And on that same broad area, is there any of the trees going to provide any shielding to block views into the housing estate, because it's all open at the moment?
No, I don't think so. The design at the minute. Sorry, can you repeat that question, Sachin, please?
Yeah. So, what type of shielding are you looking at to block views onto the housing estate, considering it'll all be very open? So, will there be any screening to block views both from the road onto the new development, and also within the buildings themselves?
Right. See, from the road, the development is far in from Coventry Road itself. So that in itself, the shielding occurs naturally because the houses on Coventry Road will already shield the whole site we're developing on. Now, when we're talking about shielding within the site and the new development, we've got the natural feature, which is the hedgerows and existing trees, of course, will provide some level of shielding. But in some instances, you just have visual contact between houses. The visual line, which is quite good for safety, and usually secure by design standards, people want active visibility onto the streets, so it provides the protection locally and safe. It's much safer. But through the detail, when we come through to the detail landscaping, there will be areas, of course, where we will employ more hedging based on what the council think and where we need to do it. So that still, again, needs to be negotiated. But overall, there will be natural shielding based on natural landscaping, existing hedgerows. But other than that, it will depend more on the landscaping layout when we negotiate with the council.
Great, thank you very much for that, Ali. And Ali, staying with you, just moving on to another topic around the makeup and the housing mix. So there's a mix of housing on the site, and you mentioned bungalows. Can you provide a breakdown of the quantity and types of housing and confirm that the bungalows were grouped behind the existing bungalows and on Leyland Road?
Correct. We've got some the bungalows to the existingly there are some bungalows on Leyland Road, and the back of that we've got 4 number of bungalows at the top right with the blue diamond shape. If you look at the layout, those are our bungalows there, and we basically, in terms of breakdown of the houses, we've got a range of 2 and 5 bed houses. Now I don't exactly have the numbers with me in terms of how many houses we are, but we can definitely, if you put that response and record that response, we will definitely give that back to you in writing and confirm the numbers. But we have generally an even mix that complies with the local housing authority requirements for this, for the local planning authorities requirements for this site.
Great, thank you. And staying on that type of sorry, moving on to another question, Ali, around another planning permission that you may or may not be aware of. How is the Travellers Camp Planning Permission on the opposite side of Coventry Road going to affect this development? I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
I'm not, apologies, I'm not aware of the Travellers Camp Planning Permission. We'll look into that again, something, because I'm not aware of it, we'll definitely feed that back to you in writing and give you more detail on that, on our thoughts.
Great. And again, Ali, coming back to you on this question about screening, there's a question that's coming after you asked that, so after you answer that, so it may be looking for clarification on your answer. There's part of this development which looks some of the houses on Coventry Road. Will there be trees or fences to separate the new homes from the current roads and the current homes on Coventry Road?
Yes, we will. Of course, I assume the gentleman or the person asked the question is talking about the back-to-back gardens and the ones that are running from 46 onwards to 78 or so. Those properties, right? They will, again, there's a natural hedge line there that will maintain the visual distance, and we will, depending on the layout and general arrangement, we could put up higher fences. The council want them just to give it the additional screening. But other than that, our fences around that are usually 1.8 meters high, standard throughout, and they provide sufficient screening. And looking at the current houses and layout, the existing houses on Coventry Road from 48 on towards 78, they've got very deep gardens. So that in itself is very helpful in the current. So essentially, with the fences up, I think it will be adequate in screening from that point.
Great, thank you very much. And moving back to Richard now, I mean, there is a lot of concern, both questions today, but also some of the questions and comments we've had previously about infrastructure and how this will really overload the infrastructure within Bulkington. I know you've covered a little bit, but I wonder if you want just to talk a bit more about how important it is to you that you do what you can to help with making sure that infrastructure can cope.
Yes, thanks, Sachin. Yeah, as I sort of said, the policy HSG8 was derived from an assessment of what the capacity of the proposed allocations would have on infrastructure. So the council's undertaken that review and then clearly set out exactly what infrastructure would be required based on the number of units to ensure that the local facilities aren't affected. or where they are affected, that they're appropriately mitigated. Now, we know that things like local schools, doctors' surgeries are an important consideration. So we would be, of course, agreeing to any contributions requested by the local council to ensure that additional capacity can be made in both of those, to ensure that the open space isn't overloaded by additional residents. We will be delivering, as Ali said, quite a significant area of open space on the site, which will also run in a linear fashion along the railway, and adjoin the other sites that are coming forward, creating essentially a new park. We'll also be making contributions towards enhancement of existing facilities at the existing Bulkington Recreation Ground and Miners Welfare Park in Bedworth. So we want to ensure that play provision is up to standard. And as we've sort of touched on a number of times, we want to ensure that the local road network is impacted as little as possible by making the necessary upgrades to the junctions, providing the infrastructure at the access, and also providing cycleways and footways to ensure that people can move as sustainably as possible, whether that's going towards Bulkington Centre or whether that's walking to their nearest bus stop, to ensure that if they're going to the wider area, they can travel by sustainable means. So we're looking at a number of ways and building on what the council have already done to ensure that we can offset any or as many impacts as possible from this development on local infrastructure.
Great. Thank you for that, Richard. And just following on from your answers there, we've had a question that's come in, just worried about what the current facilities are. The current pub is boarded up. The Spa Shop is always empty because of the new co-op. Will the village be given some attention to either improve the looks or create new facilities? One of you can talk about how the council might use any Section 106 money or to help facilitate that.
So the council haven't requested anything specifically for those purposes as of yet, but they have obviously requested money from similar developments towards community facilities. So if the council seek contributions towards enhancement to the centre, we will most certainly consider those and whether they would be policy compliant. I mean, things in terms of shops being empty and pubs being boarded up, it's almost the fact that additional development within the settlement will actually provide a greater customer base for those facilities. So with having a greater customer base, it's more likely that they'll be able to generate a greater number of services and facilities within the settlement itself.
Great, thank you. And now moving on to James, we've just got a few questions. What design features is built into the pond near the railway bank? Over the years, there have been structural problems on this elevated section track. Can you confirm the stored water in the pond will not undermine the railway?
Hi. Yeah, so the pond is going to be designed just to hold the water within, and the area of permanent standing water will have some, it will be lined so that water can't seep into the ground layer, and the banks of the storage are likely going to be clay, preventing water to spill out into the topsoil and substrata along that railway embankment. And the only way water will be leaving that pond is through our control, our drainage control, which discharge into the ditch that runs under the railway embankment currently. The control is going to be designed so that water won't be flowing into the ditch at a greater rate than is currently happening during storms. So there won't be an effect from drainage, surface water collecting in that area. So the surface water collecting in that area won't be impacting the embankment. As for the actual construction of the pond itself, as you can see there is a
Thank you for that. And while we're with you, I think this may be a question for you, or it may be for Ali Bull. There's a couple of questions about the level of the land, and I assume there's the question around the land is to do with the drainage points. So the current level of the field that abuts the bungalows on Leyland Road is lower. Will you be raising the level or building at the existing current level of the site?
So I will be undertaking a levels design for this site, and it doesn't make any sense for us to raise that end of site any further than it already is. Roads and houses will generally be put in at the current existing levels, unless there was a particular reason why that can't happen. And there's no reason at the top of site that would result in us needing to raise those bungalows higher than existing ground level.
Okay, and the question I think was being asked on the basis of ensuring there isn't flooding. So as well as doing the work that you're doing levels, you will any mitigations as you talked about earlier to ensure that the water runoff doesn't lead to flooding. You'll be doing that at the same time to ensure that the people that live in those properties aren't prone to flooding. Is that right?
Yeah, I see. Sorry, I thought that was in the context of overlooking. Okay, so yeah, the gardens won't be running into that northeast boundary steeply, if at all. Like I say, the natural topography is falling away from that boundary, so it's most likely that the rear of those gardens will be higher than the sort of hard standing areas around those bungalows. So it will be picked up and carried south. So yeah, houses on the north boundary aren't at risk of flooding from those bungalows or any of the site. Great,
thank you very much for that. And now, Richard, I wonder if you, we've got a question on has considerations been taken into account about air pollution for the standing traffic waiting to turn in and out of the road? That might be Richard, or it may actually be Joe. I think it's probably actually Joe.
That's fine, Sachin. I'll jump in here. I mean, as part of the planning application, we're undertaking what they call an air quality assessment, and that looks at the number of vehicle movements generated per day and the likely pollution levels. So it's something that we're looking at as part of the planning application, yes.
Great, thank you. For those listening in, we are just a few minutes away from coming to the end of the Q&A session. So if you have any final questions, please do type them in. Of course, this isn't your only time to ask questions. You can send an email to the email address you got this for, or submit it through the website. So I'm just looking through. I think we may have answered all the questions. Joe, there's still a little bit of concern around whether Coventry Road is a racetrack and whether there's anything more that can be done as part of the design of this scheme to help mitigate some of the problems on Coventry Road.
Yeah, as I said earlier, it is something that will be taken into account as part of the design of the access, and to ensure that it is going to be a safe access, and that may well include some form of speed reduction features on Coventry Lane itself. That will come through the process of agreeing the site access arrangements and the road safety audit. that will accompany the planning application as part of make sure that we've assessed the proposal in detail before it's submitted for planning. And it'll also involve feedback from the Highway Authority, obviously, in terms of known safety issues such as that. So we will be talking to them throughout the process.
Great, thank you. And just coming back to Sir James one more time around flooding, and this time it's a particular question. The properties on Coventry Road gardens are lower than the field. What provisions are in place to stop flooding onto gardens in Coventry Road? I wonder if you can just, I know you touched on that before, but if you want to just expand on that a little bit.
So the buildings are likely to be set higher than the proposed roads in the site. So any sort of flooding that would occur around a private property, it's going to be likely that flows into the highway, and that's what it will be designed to do. So any flooding should be from the sort of sewer assets proposed as part of the site's network, will be contained on site, and that's part of the criteria that the drainage network has to fulfill, is that during certain storm events where the flood water is contained to site. Another thing to consider would be flood flow, or sorry, the surface water runoff from the gardens. So despite they may be higher than the buildings against on Coventry Road, but between the plots of this site and the plots on Coventry Road, there are existing drainage ditches that will convey surface water runoff to the south, and it's not our intention to change these at all. So they'll be in place permanently, and if anything, during the course of this development, be cleaned out just as part of site works. So I don't think that there will be any flood risk from gardens onto, as in surface water flow from garden to garden. That's not going to happen.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. We're just coming to the end now, so but before I do that, I can see that local councillor Councillor Richard Smith has, as part of the discussions that we've been having today, has confirmed that he'll be working with the council as part of this planning application to seek traffic calming measures, as well as contributions to the village, the community, and the conference centre. So that's positive. That's come directly from the ward council site. So it is 7 o'clock. So I do want to finish, because I know people have made plans. It's right that we finish at the right time. So just to remind everyone that at the end of this presentation, when this presentation ends, please stay at your computer, and you'll be able to you'll get a feedback form. Please do fill that in. If you're not able to do that, you can access that feedback form through our website, vistry-bulkington.co.uk. If you do have any further questions, my email address is on the screen, sachin@curtinco.com. My mobile phone number is there as well. So please do give me a call or send me an email, and we'll try and make sure we get any of your questions answered. On that note, can I thank you all for giving up an hour of your time in the evening when you might be with your family. So thank you very much. We very much appreciate it. All your questions and comments and feedback through the process will be taken on board, both as part of the planning application process, but as part of how the council ultimately makes a decision. So this time has been useful. As I said, please do stay on to fill in the questionnaire. But on that night, can I bid you all good night? Good night.